Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my lovely ones, and welcome to episode 203, where we are going to dive into something that I've been asked about by clients a fair amount. When you can't help comparing your relationship to other people's, or you can't help compare your partner to other spouses, and then you feel worse about your relationship. If this happens for you, you are not alone, and I'm going to give you some help to move out of this trap, really, because it really does zero good for you or your marriage, at least when you do this comparison thing the way most people do it. So in this episode, we're going to look at compare and despair and how to get out of it, and how to actually use comparison to benefit your relationship instead of to make it worse. And I'm also going to review or talk again about how our lizard brains tend to take over and really do a number on our marriages. And we're going to review some ways that you can work with that lizard brain of yours in order to stop it from making things harder in your marriage, and instead let your wise brain steer the ship so that you can make your marriage better instead of worse. So if lizard brain, you're like, what does that mean? I'm going to talk a little bit about it today, but if you want to get a sort of fuller picture of the lizard brain and the wise brain, absolutely listen to episode 120. All right, so before we dive in, here's a reminder. This whole podcast gives you the beginning of so many skills and ways of thinking about marriage and your partner and yourself, and it gives you tips and advice for having an amazing marriage. But I absolutely cannot help you nearly as deeply and specifically on this podcast as I can when we coach together in person. And until the end of December, as an end of year special, I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm offering a 3-session one-to-one coaching package. Now, it's just for people who have taken my courses before. So specifically Foundations of Emotional Well-Being, or Stop Taking It So Personally, or Free Your Heart for More Love, Getting Past Blame, Resentment, and Grievance. So if you've taken any of those 3 courses in the past, you are welcome to join me in this 3-session, 1-month-long opportunity to coach one-to-one with me. I'm calling it A Better Marriage in a Month, a galvanizing mini one-to-one marriage coaching program for highly sensitive women to start taking charge of what you can in your relationship and see the power you have to change the whole culture of your marriage for the better in less than 30 days. Now, this mini program is 40% off of what I'd normally charge for coaching. And that's because I really wanted those of you who were curious about coaching with me to actually have a chance to do so without a giant commitment. So imagine having all of the knowledge that I give you here, but concentrated and filtered and deeper and targeted precisely for your unique challenges and goals and desires in your unique marriage, really tailored just for you. So 1 hour together does more for you than 100 hours of listening to podcast episodes. That's exactly what you're going to get when you coach with me. It's by far the fastest, easiest, deepest, and longest lasting change possible, and it works where other forms of help have failed. As a client said to me the other day, Hannah, you see so much of what's going on for me that I can't see on my own. Without your help, there's no way I'd be able to see these things and make the fast changes that I've made these last months. I'm so incredibly glad to have you. And I hear this kind of thing often. Over and over, my clients tell me it was only when they finally chose to work directly with me as a client that their marriages finally felt light, loving, and connected again, and better than ever before. So to learn more about this 1-month coaching opportunity with me, head to the link in the show notes. I'm just going to stick it there for you, or keep an eye out for emails about it in your inbox, or just email me directly to ask for more information about it. I do have limited spots, and it It's first come, first serve. And this deal is only going to last for this month till the end of 2025. So if you're interested, definitely reach out ASAP. All right, so compare and despair in relationships. This tendency to compare our lives, our marriages, our partners, ourselves to others is a thing our brains just do. It's a wired in normal brain function that is really innate. And like so many innate or instinctual ways that our brains operate, it has a purpose, albeit one that often causes more pain than gain. So in comparison's case, its purpose is to help us navigate social situations, allow us to make judgments, understand our place in the world, and gather information for self-improvement. But it often happens too much in our brains and in ways that really don't bring us improvement at all. It's often so common that it kind of doesn't do these things that there's a name for this tendency, and that is compare and despair. Because that's exactly what we mostly do when we compare. We add in a good dose of despair. So it might sound like in our heads, oh, that couple is just so in love, so much more than we are. Or they communicate so well and lovingly. How come we can't communicate like that? How come he doesn't look at me like that when I say things like that? Something is wrong with us. Things will never be like that for us, right? Ever had thought processes like that? Or a client once asked me this. I know of a couple that reads the same book and then they talk about it. Something that I think would be so fun, but my husband isn't on board. I feel that his reluctance causes me to have hurt around not being able to do something like fun like that. I have thoughts like, I'm not important enough for him to consider trying something I'd want to do. So you can just feel the despair in that, yeah? So these are very normal thoughts that we might have when we see other couples, really in love or seemingly really healthy or happy together. And even though it's normal and common to have these types of thoughts, there are really some negative ramifications that come from it. And really, it will just make you feel worse and worse about your relationship. The more you compare and despair, the worse you're going to feel. And when you feel worse about your relationship, you don't, contrary to what you may think, always try to improve things effectively. No, usually from feeling bad, we act bad or we act unskillfully. So even if you're motivated to improve things in your relationship, if you're feeling despair or super unhappiness of some sort, you will have less capacity to improve things than if you're rooted in a feeling of, say, empowerment or hope or confidence or motivation. Despair just doesn't create motivation. Despair creates hopelessness and helplessness and disempowerment. My clients tell me that when they're in compare and despair mode, they act more petty, more critical and judgmental towards themselves and their partner. They have more harsh or cold tones of voice with their spouse. They maybe pick fights or even shut down and withdraw. And those, of course, are not the best route to improving things, And then, of course, they feel even worse because things are even harder between them and their partner. So compare and despair tends to undermine your relationship and really sends you on a classic lizard brain downward spiral. So did you catch that? Yes. This compare and despair thing is 100% your lizard brain in action. So you can work with it the way you work with any other lizard brain tendency. So let's do a super quick lizard brain review. So the lizard brain is my term for really your primal, sort of older, least evolved brain, your survival brain. And this is not anatomically correct, but it's a very helpful way of kind of thinking about the brain, simplified way of understanding what's really going on here for us. This part of our brain is very negatively biased. It is what we sometimes call the lack and attack brain. So it looks for what's wrong and missing. It focuses on that, and it will tend to attack as well. It will catastrophize. It will interpret things that are happening in the very worst way. It will magnify flaws and shortcomings. And it generally operates from fear. And that is because this part of our brain is designed to help us survive, right? So if we're fearful, if we're always looking for what's wrong and missing and might go wrong, we have a better chance of surviving. But we will never thrive when this part of our brain is in charge. Now, a primary way to work with this part of our brain so that it does not rule our lives or really wreck our lives is to bring in the loving, guiding wisdom of the other part of our brain, which we will call the wise brain. We want our wise brain to supervise and kind of caretake and guide our lizard brain, like the mature, wise adult in the room, guiding and, in a sense, taming the sort of immature, more instinctual, not fully developed in the prefrontal cortex, less evolved parts of yourself, right? So this wise brain really can help make sure that that lizard brain part does not sabotage you and your happiness in your life and definitely in your relationship. So as is true with so many things in our love lives, the solution or antidote to compare and despair in relationships is learning to get more in charge of your brain. Specifically, to learn to supervise your lizard brain with your wise brain. So here are some ways to do that when it comes to compare and despair specifically. Number 1, when you are seeing what is so great about that other couple or that other husband, notice that you are making up a lot of stuff about them. Because most of the time, you can't actually know their relationship from the inside. You cannot know who that man really is, or what his annoying or hard to live with traits are that would drive you crazy eventually, right? You're making up that they are a perfect couple, that he's a perfect husband, maybe not even perfect, but that he's wonderful. Like, you don't actually know from the inside, right? It's so easy to look at someone else's life and over glorify it. Weirdly, I think that's something our brains also tend to do. It's like the grass is greener syndrome, right? We look at what other people have and make it even better than it is. And the truth is, people put on their best faces in public. So again, you cannot know what's really happening inside of a relationship from what you observe. Now, if it's a friend or a family member who's specifically telling you that their relationship is amazing, then you might trust them. But in general, we do have this tendency to make up that other people's relationships are so much better than ours. And the truth is, even if someone is telling you, oh, my relationship is so amazing, please also take that with a grain of salt to some degree. Like, some people do only want to share what's good because they feel too vulnerable to share what's hard. And the truth is, all relationships are challenging in some ways. So notice that you are likely making up that they're so amazing and incredible in their love for each other, and be open to the possibility that they are also struggling in certain ways or having challenges. It might just be different than the ones you're having. All right, tip number 2. This one actually might be the most simple and most powerful of all the tips I'm going to offer you today. And I thought about just giving you this one on this episode. So definitely use this one. So instead of using comparison to despair and make your relationship harder, use their relationship, this other person that you see is so in love or whatever, use their relationship as inspiration. I know this can be hard when your brain wants to go into this negative compare and despair thing, but really notice the positive things about these other people's love life and let it inspire you. So instead of despairing, like, oh, we never have that kind of lovely conversation, or we don't look at each other like that, say to yourself, ooh, I love that about them. How could we learn from them? How can you learn from them? That is such a beautiful question to ask yourself. Or ask, what can I do inspired by them? Like, ask yourself these questions and really answer them. And of course, this is going to work especially well when you're comparing their relationship to yours. But you can also use it when you're comparing your husband to someone else's. You can ask these specific questions of yourself then. how can I approach my spouse as that other woman approaches her spouse? And what can I learn from how she is with her husband? Like, what can I take from the way she relates to her husband to learn to relate better to my husband? Like, if this couple really does have something going for them that you'd love to have going for yourself and your relationship, learn from them. They're beautiful teachers for you. Asking yourself something like, what can I learn from her and them, is a 7,000 times better question than how come I don't have that? Or how come she's so lucky and I'm not? Like, your negatively biased brain's questions will always just take you down a path that will stop you from growing and will stop you learning from what you need to learn to have more of what this other couple has. Whereas when you ask, what can I learn from her or from them? This is a wise brain question, and it will give you really important information to work with and grow from. It really will direct your brain towards actually improving things instead of down into that tunnel of gloom and doom that really breaks your relationship further. So if you're only going to take one thing from today's episode, let it be that. To be inspired by and to learn from this other couple's success. Now, sometimes our lizard brain really doesn't want to give up its lizarding without some direct attention. In other words, it doesn't want to give up despairing without us giving it more direct attention. So here's how you can really supervise and attend to that lizard brain directly, like really acknowledging it like you would a fearful, upset little kid. Step 1 for this, you can work directly with that despair part and notice that observing the other person or the other couple's success or positive attribute is not a problem in and of itself. Like, it's not their success and their happiness that's making you feel bad. It's what you do with their success or happiness. You add despairing thoughts that cast doubt and negativity on you and your partner and your relationship. So what we want to do here is separate out or identify the specific thoughts that are causing the despair. Because it's not the circumstance. It's not the couple that's happy over there that's making you feel despair. It's your thoughts about them and what you're making it mean about you and your partner and your marriage. So in the example I gave in the beginning of this episode, which was they communicate so well and so lovingly, how come we can't communicate like that? Notice that the first half of that statement was just observing what you noticed about them. But the second half was where despair generating thoughts came in. How come we can't communicate like that? So that's the piece we really want to focus in on. And then you can go a little bit deeper and ask, what am I making it mean about us or our relationship or me or my husband? Or another question you can ask yourself is, what am I afraid of here? And your brain is likely going to answer with something like this. I'll never have that kind of communication with my husband. Or even, I'll never be happy because we don't communicate like that. Or I'm not lovable enough. Or he'll never be loving enough. Or like the earlier example of a client who asked about the couple that reads the same book and then talks about it, her despairing thought about it was, I'm not important enough for him to consider trying something I'd want to do. So really your work is to simply find the thoughts that are creating the despair and then just work with that thought or those thoughts the same way you would any lizard brain thought. So I've talked about this many different times in different ways on the podcast, and it's really a huge part of what I do directly with my clients, because learning how to work with our thoughts and our beliefs is multifaceted, multi-layered, subtle, nuanced. And I really help my clients stop believing the thoughts and beliefs that hurt them and their relationships. And there are many ways to do this, and I always personalize this depending on the client and their particular beliefs and thoughts and thing going on in their relationship. So it really, really is best done in person for the most nuance and depth and truly shifting the thought patterns that really hurt ourselves and our relationships. But I do want to share a quick overview of a couple ways you can begin to stop believing these damaging thoughts and beliefs. So here are a couple things you can do with a lizard brain thought to not believe it or to not have it feel true, which honestly, when it feels true, that's the only time it takes us down that vicious lizard brain relationship wrecking spiral. So the first thing after you've sort of found the actual thoughts that are leading you into feeling despair and hopelessness and helplessness and all of this is to simply notice how that thought feels and acknowledge it to yourself with kindness. So you could literally say something like, all right, honey, you're comparing and despairing right now, and that's okay and a normal thing to do when you're not perfectly happy in your relationship all the time. And ow, it really hurts. Or you could say, oh, here you go again, once again thinking you're never going to have the kind of communication that they seem to have, and that really, really hurts. And then let yourself feel the pain of it. Sometimes we really do need to feel how bad it feels. Like it's legitimate to feel this pain. In fact, it's healthy to acknowledge it to yourself, what you're experiencing. And as you do this, as you let yourself feel it, as you acknowledge what's going on for you, it's really taking a step towards not continuing to fall into the trap of compare and despair anymore. Because by slowing down enough to really feel it and see it, you become aware of the pain you're creating for yourself. And not with blame, but with like a healthy regard for your humanity. Like this is something we humans do. We compare and then we despair, and it is painful. And it is optional. When we're ready to stop creating this pain for ourselves and choose to put our wise brain in the driver's seat again. Which brings us to our next step, which is to realize the thought is only a thought, not a fact, not a truth, and to disidentify with that thought. So saying something like this to ourselves can really help. Oh, here goes my lizard brain again in compare and despair mode. That really helps sort of distance us from the thought. It's like witnessing ourselves in a thought process instead of being in the thought process. And on the same note, you could say something like this to yourself. Oh, there's that old story again that I'll never be happy because we're not communicating like that couple, right? Or I notice that I'm thinking the thought that he's not kind like my ex. Or I notice I'm thinking the thought that I'm not important to him enough to do things I want to. So just kind of rephrasing it like this in these different ways can really help us disidentify with the thought, stop melding with it, and therefore stop being in the story, stop believing it fully, which is going to take us a little bit more out of despair and pain mode. A further step or option here is to directly question the thought and prove it untrue. So again, there's various ways to do this, and sometimes it takes some real subtlety and nuance to really make it work for you, which is why I work so closely and personalize everything with my clients. But you could try simply asking yourself, how is this thought not true? Or how is the opposite of this thought true? So in our examples that we've been using, we could say, how is it not true that I'll never be happy because we don't communicate like they do? Or, to maybe make it sound a little bit more simple, how is it true that I may well be happy even if right now we don't communicate like they do? See how that kind of opens things up? And of course, you want to actually answer the question. So another example would be, how is it not true that I'm not important to him enough to try the thing I want to try? Or again, to not have that double negative, which can be kind of confusing to the brain, you can ask yourself, how is it true that I am important enough to him to try things I want to try? So when you actually try to answer that question, your brain is going to likely come up with answers. Your brain will see how perhaps he tried the recipe you made recently, or he went to that movie that you wanted to see last month. Right? It will come up with pieces of evidence that show that it is true, that you're important enough to him to try things that you want to try sometimes. When we ask our wise brain good questions like these, Like, how is that not true? And how is the opposite true? Your wise brain can almost always come up with answers that refute our despairing, lying lizard brain thoughts, because that's the truth. Our lizard brain is a drama queen. It is almost always exaggerating or even completely lying to us in the worst, meanest ways possible. Like telling yourself you'll never be happy because you and your partner aren't communicating like this other couple is just mean and false. There are so many ways to be happy, and things don't have to be perfect for you to be happy with your specific partner in your specific relationship, especially if you commit to growing and working towards what you want. So it's just really important to be on to the lies your lizard brain tells instead of believing them. So always question your lizard brain thoughts. All right, so your final tip to help with compare and despair. If you're really stuck in comparing mode, then use it to your advantage. Like, some of our brains are actually more wired to compare. So if your brain already has like a deep neural pathway to compare, go ahead and use that for your advantage instead of to your detriment. Use it to feel better by asking yourself, what do we have going for us that they might not have going for them? Like, they might be great at communicating, but what do we have that they might want or might be able to learn from? I honestly don't think it's wrong to compare, especially when you do it in a way that helps you grow more confidence and contentment in your relationship. So if you must compare, use it like this to reflect on what is good in your relationship that other people might be seeing and using and comparing and despairing about. Now, of course, this is not to try to be egotistical or arrogant about your relationship at all. And it's not to look down on anyone else. It's really just to help yourself step out of despair and notice what is already good that you can build on. Because that's motivating and empowering. And that's what you need to actually make your relationship into one that you really do love and truly deeply enjoy. So, as a little note, please understand that you want to have patience with this as you try to break free of this really habit of comparing and despairing. It really is a rewiring of your brain, of your old thought patterns, of your old thought habits. It's really like building a new highway in your brain. So it can take patience, persistence, and consistency. So just be patient with yourself and keep using what I've suggested here. I want to end by leaving you with this important thought. A great relationship is one that challenges you to grow into a stronger, more loving, more empowered version of yourself, and really to heal old wounds so that you can be fully healed. And the easy relationships in the world don't always offer opportunity for that, because you get to just coast and glide and never look at your deep, difficult places and wounds. But in a relationship where conflict and challenges arise, wow, that is a huge opportunity to heal and grow and work on those places in yourself that limit you, that keep you from genuine fulfillment and love and thriving in life. And the places you compare and despair, they are a doorway into that growth and healing, especially when you use the suggestions I've given to you today. Get to using them. And if you're intrigued about the idea of coaching one-to-one with me for just 1 month, and by the way, you're going to get access to a little learning site of the most essential things I teach my longer-term one-to-one clients. These are the things that really allow you to solve any problem in your relationship. So if you're intrigued about all of this, absolutely go right now and take a look at what you get and what this whole thing is about at the link I'm putting in the show notes, or email me at hannah@lifeisworthloving.com to just ask more about it. And if you haven't yet taken one of the prerequisite courses, you can actually just go ahead and grab one now. And that would have to be the Stop Taking It So Personally course or the Free Your Heart for More Love course, because the other course, Foundations of Emotional Wellbeing, is not currently running. It's an actual live group program. But you can go ahead and get one of those 2 courses, run through it in a few days or a week, and be eligible to do this 1 month long Better Marriage 1-to-1 coaching program with me. And it would be a complete honor to work directly with you on whatever is most important to work on and change right now in your marriage so you can feel so much more fulfilled, more lit up, more love and connection like you want to in your marriage. All right, lovely ones, be oh so well.